I've gotten to know this lady over the last year and just love her. Kristine Munro is the founder and community builder of Illume Connective, and she hosts the Pivot to Passion podcast. Her journey started 15 years ago in real estate and finance. She built a seven-figure, award-winning business, and outwardly she had a lot of success. But she felt unaligned, knowing that deep down she was meant for more. Despite her fear, she left it all to start from scratch, pivoting her way to follow her heart and her purpose. On her path to self discovery, Kristine learned to tap into her own intuition, which led her to find her passion for building a community for female entrepreneurs to connect at a deeper level, have easy access to mentors, and support to pursue their biggest dreams. Kristine is a certified Reiki master. She's also a life and business coach. She mentors women, helping them find deep connection and align through their inner work. Kristine is a proud mom of two. Her top priority is being a role model for her kids to show them there are no limits to what you can achieve. I know you're going to love today's conversation with Kristine. I've got a question for you. Who is the person you're being? Are you satisfied? It's okay. This is a judge-free zone, and it's exactly why I started the show. Welcome to Be the Person, a podcast for the brave and the curious who are ready to explore who they are fully created to be. I'm your host, Randall, the adventurous one leading this investigative journey of transformation. By delving into topics and asking unexpected questions, we will discover the keys for unlocking our true potential and being our best selves today. You may be surprised by what you find when you let go of fear in order to discover the answers of becoming the person you were made to be. Welcome to Be the Person podcast. I am super honored to have on Kristine Munro today. She is also from Denver. She has a community heart. That's why I love her. I am part of her community, and I am so excited for her to share today. Welcome, Kristine, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Annie. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about you and what you do for work right now.
Well, right now, I like to say that I help others illuminate their light in becoming who they're meant to be. I do that through community here in Denver. We do a lot of wellness, we do a lot of business growth, we do a lot of personal development. And I do that through a lot of inner work. That's what helped me transition into who I am meant to be. And I do retreats and I do an inner circle mastermind, which is a container for women to transform their life and quantum leap into their next level.
Yeah. So good. I feel like you're doing so much in all different areas. And I know we've both been a part of masterminds in the past, and they just are such a great way for
Mhm,
women to make change and to have
mhm.
that community and your
Yeah,
leadership to do it.
thank you. Yeah. I know that's definitely when I started from scratch, it's definitely what I invested in because I thought, I tried all the things like, I'm gonna try to do it on my own. I could do this. I've been in business for 20 years. I could do this on my own, and then realize like, no, when you're starting from scratch and you're starting from the beginning, especially in your 40s, you're like, no, I actually need like help because then there's a whole bunch of other things that go along with it. Like I was doing the same career for 20 years and then I transitioned into following my heart. But it's like when you have to leave your identity that you attached yourself to, it's like your whole world comes crashing down like that you wouldn't even know is happening. So I had to navigate through that of letting go of my past and not knowing how to do that and not knowing how to move forward. And then I had to build a career again at the same time. So it was a very interesting period of my life where I had to go through it in order to help other people go through it as well.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that you do that now and help other ladies. Can you take us back and share, like, what did you do before? I know what you do now, but take us through your journey of recreating yourself because I know it's not what you did in the past.
Yeah. So I come from like a finance, I'm an accountant. I came from a finance background to real estate development for 20 years. And when we left to move from Canada to the US, it was like that push I needed to get me out of my comfort zone because I always wanted to leave what I was doing. I knew I was unfulfilled, but I didn't know what I wanted. So I stayed there. I stayed there because I didn't have another branch to latch onto. And I thought that I would just always stay there until I knew. But then I was pushed into it. It's always a blessing, like, why? So we were pushed into moving here, and at first I was excited, but then it was like, "Oh, great, now I don't know what am I supposed to do with myself?" So I started to just lean into things that, like, brought me joy and started to do things where I knew it wasn't gonna be my forever thing. I knew that I just had to just start. So, when my girlfriend had asked me, she was in network marketing and she was doing, like, skincare and beauty, I thought, "Okay, well, I do like skincare and beauty, and I am home." My kids were 4 and 1 at the time, like, I had a one-year-old at home, so I knew I had to do something at home, and it worked for me, and I just knew, okay, well, this is not gonna be my forever thing, but I'm just gonna try it. And one thing led to another, and that's what I just kept doing. So I did that first, and that kinda led me into being really good at marketing myself on Instagram, where I ended up teaching my teams and other teams how to use Instagram for their business. And then I ended up having a course, and then that led into a bunch of real estate people because that's my background. They're like, well, we don't want to do our own Instagram. We just want you to do it for us. So then I had created a Instagram agency for real estate professionals because I knew the real estate business and I knew the marketing on Instagram business. So I did create an agency where we were taking on clients. So all those things just started happening as I just took the first step. It was in around that time where I was like, well, I still am feeling stuck. It's not still what I really want to do. I'm doing it, and it's great. So that's when I started to look into mentorship, masterminds, all those things. And what I thought I was hiring a business coach because I thought at the time I need more business strategies, even though I had been in business for 20 years. I'm like, well, I need more. So I hired her. And like the first thing she said was, I want you to start meditating. And I was like, well, what does that have to do with my business? But it had everything to do with my business. And she taught me things I didn't know I needed, which was the inner work. So we did a lot of healing together. We did a lot of, um, just a lot of things that I was working on myself. And through that process is how I discovered leaning into things that I felt more called to do, and that is community. So, and it started with, I don't know why, but I just keep seeing like me gathering women around a beautiful brunch. So it's like little baby steps of just taking that first action. And I remember being terrified of like, I don't even know anyone in Denver. Like, I'm gonna start this brunch and who am I gonna invite, you know? So, it was a lot of reach outs to people because I followed them on Instagram. I'm like, "Hey, you know, you live in Colorado. If you feel like meeting other women," very scary. Like, I remember crying to my coach a lot. Like, I don't even know who's gonna come, and it's like a lot to put yourself out there. And it's just one thing that led to another. And now that Illume has become what it is now, whereas we started as business bosses who brunch, and now it's grown into Illume Collective with all the things that we do now. But if I if I if I wanted to do that, like, I would have never known that vision at the beginning, and so it's just kinda taking those first steps and letting it develop into what it is. And now that I do what I do now, if you connect the dots back, if I look back at, like, the things that brought me joy in my previous career, it would be like I was the head of the social committee of my corporate work, and it's like all the things that brought me joy back then is like what I'm doing for my work now. But I would have never known to follow that path if I would have just sat down and tried to like logically think of it. It's just kind of just taking it one step at a time.
I'm so glad to hear you say that because so often I think, I know for myself and other people that I talk to, you think you have to have this 5-year grand plan and have it all figured out. And sometimes it's like, you know what? I just know the next step
Mhm,
and I don't even know what comes after that. But I love that you just kept doing the next thing.
mhm. I did it out of one because I honestly didn't know what else to do, and I didn't have a choice because I was stuck at home, And so it's like just taking the things that made sense at the time. I think what people also get stuck in is, like you said, I have to have the 5-year plan. Or if I pick something, I know I've talked to a lot of women who say, if I pick something, I'm going to stay committed to this, or I feel like I'm kind of bound to this thing, but you're not. You can do something and say, this is for right now. It's not my forever thing. And knowing that going in, it's and then you don't feel like you're stuck in something. So many women say, like, I'm stuck. Like, are you? You can make a decision that you're not stuck. You don't have to be stuck in that forever. You could say this is temporary.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
Well, how did you like if people are looking for their purpose? I know there are things that you did or tools that you use that you've talked about before. Can
Mhm.
you walk us through some of those tools?
Yeah. So the first one is for myself, it's meditating. But what that is basically setting aside some time where you can actually get quiet with your thoughts. Because what is blocking us in our way of our intuition of getting clarity, of figuring out what we want, is the noise, the outside noise. And with all life happening around us, we're busy, we have families, we have work, we have all the things. It's really hard to get clarity. So if you can dedicate 5-10 minutes out of your day where you're going to give that to yourself to be clear, to sit with your thoughts, then and kind of like ask yourself, okay, I'm looking for clarity on my purpose, or what's my next step. Just go in with doing that meditation, whether that's a walk for you or driving your car without any music on, or sitting like I did, like alone in my bedroom. Whatever works for you to get quiet, to start doing that. And so what I was doing is I actually did a guided meditation, because I know that a lot of people are like, well, I can't sit quietly, like my thoughts are running. Well, everybody's are, like mine are too. But it's like a muscle. You have to train your mind to stay still. So, of course, even till this day, I've been meditating for, I don't know, 3 years now. If it's not where every single time I meditate, I'm going to get in the zone. Some days obviously are gonna be busier. My mind's like, "Well, I didn't even get there. I wasn't present for that at all," but it's just the practice of it. And so I would do a guided one because I couldn't just sit there in silence. So I did a guided one by Gabby Bernstein. She's like my favorite. It was a free one online. I still give that one out all the time. And it's basically like a 15-minute guided meditation to visualize how your life is, your future is. And when you don't have a vision for what your future is, she just kinda guides you through it. Like, imagine, like, you doing what you want, and it's just the intention of her words of saying, like, you're envisioning what you are meant to do, you're envisioning what you wanna do. You'll be surprised if you can get still and you practice the same one over and over again, that s things will start coming to you. Now, what's interesting about this is that things started coming to me that didn't make sense, like me speaking on stage. And I remember thinking back then, like, well, I don't want to do that. So I don't know why that vision's coming into my head. Um, and this is how your subconscious works. Your subconscious knows what you're meant for. Your subconscious knows what you want. But sometimes your conscious brain will say, no, I don't want that. But that's just fear. So I convinced myself that I don't want to speak. I convinced myself that I don't want to do a podcast. But really, not realizing that it was just fear. It was like these stories and this negative self-talk that I would say to myself. Also, like previous experiences of myself in my previous company, where I did do a lot of public speaking and then I would choke on stage. It was horrible, horrifying to me. And I hated it. And I would tell myself I'm just not good at it. And so the more and more I saw that, it was confusing to me. But what happened was when I did my first I would see the brunch too. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to create this brunch. But then I was like, but I don't want to speak. And I was terrified to speak at the brunch, but I was like, I really want to do the brunch. Anyway, as the more I was doing more inner work, and the more I was following that visual in my meditations, the more things started to come to fruition and the more things started to make sense. So it's like I always say, when things don't make sense, that like that's your intuition. It's not always going to make sense. But it's just to follow, to keep following it. And so that's the first step, is like I did a lot of visualizing, meditating, and then writing them down. And so when you do this on repeat and you're doing something consistently, where you're training your mind to look to what you visualize, um, that's when I started writing them down, and I truly believe that that consistency and that pattern, you're repatterning your mind to think a different way. And that's how manifestation, that's how you manifest the life that you envision, or that what your subconscious wants for you, is just getting still with your thoughts first.
So good. And, meditation, I was telling you before we started recording, is new to me. And it was sort of forced on me because of an injury. I was like, well, I can't work out. That's normally how I handle stress. So I'm going to start to meditate. And honestly, it was something I've wanted to do for a long time. If you look at all the really high performers, meditation is one of their practices.
Mhm.
But I always thought I was too busy. And,
Mhm.
you're right. Like it's a muscle you have to work. And for the first, I don't know, a week, I don't know if I did anything good, but I started 5 to 10 minutes and my brain would wander, but
Yep.
more and more it would start to like come in.
Mhm.
So I'm still like such a beginner at it. I love that you still do it. And it was funny because I was listening to some of your earlier podcasts and you referenced that Gabby
Oh, I
Bernstein
do. Okay.
meditation. So I saved it and I'm
Okay.
going to do it tomorrow
Oh,
and then
yeah.
put it in the show notes.
Okay, great. Yeah, put it in the show notes. It's a good one. Oh, I can't wait for you to start it. It's like really good. And I love that you're incorporating this, but you're uh, like everyone else, like even when my first coach told me to start meditating, I was like, "What? I don't have time for that." Like, and I don't even know what that's going to do for me, but it's funny how things come into your life when it's like forced upon you, because okay, if you're not going to do it on your own, this is actually what you need, so here you go. So I'm excited for you to start doing it. Like, so many magical things happen from just giving yourself that quiet time in your mind.
Yeah. Because a lot of years I would have said, one, I'm too busy. And two, it just seems like, a waste of time to me of just being quiet. And it's really reframed over these last 3 months. Like,
Yeah.
no, no, you need time to be quiet. Like, how can you even hear what you're thinking if you're not quiet?
Yeah. Totally. I love that. Like, so many people have that, like that mindset, I guess. It's because they don't know what the outcome is unless you actually do it. That's with a lot of things. If you don't know what the result is,
Yeah.
and you just think of what the action is, yeah, it does seem kind of counterproductive. Like, well, taking 10 minutes out of my day to sit there and do nothing, because we are conditioned to believe that rest and not doing anything is unproductive.
Right.
And as high achievers, we overachieve and we always have to feel productive. And if we don't feel productive, then we feel inadequate. We don't feel enough. It brings up all those things of why why we are high achievers in the first place, right?
Yeah.
But not knowing that being quiet is actually very productive. But that's training also. That's another rewiring of your brain. We're not brought up that way. We don't actually believe that. It's you our you have to retrain your mind, and it won't be retrained and reprogrammed unless you see the results of it. Then you're like, "Oh, it actually does make me more productive. It does make me more clear, more intuitive. Then I'm going to keep doing it." And I do notice that if I don't, of course, then life gets busier, and I find that if the more I get busy in my work, things like that will drop off naturally. I'll be like, "Okay, well, I don't have time for that today." Even though I know the result, it's just I think it's just human nature, and it's just common where when you're really busy, those are the things that we tend to knock off are the things for ourselves. And so I notice though, if I don't do it every day, if I don't make that a non-negotiable, I will see things starting to slip in my life and business. And so I'm like, "Oh, well, got to get back on again."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So glad that you notice. You talk a lot about like it was scary to make that change because you were really good at your position. And
Mhm.
then even, you create this company doing Instagram marketing, you're good at that too. And you leave that behind.
Mhm.
How did you overcome that fear? Because I feel like a lot of people are there. They have jobs that maybe they're not passionate about, they're not fulfilled,
Mhm.
but they're scared. And it can be a really scary place.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I've made a couple big transitions where I've learned that I did the unfulfilling thing for too long. So I was in a previous marriage for I was with him for 14 years. Everything was great, like he was wonderful, but I just knew it wasn't right. So I wasn't fulfilled in that relationship. And then I was in my career for 20. Now that's too long to be in something unfulfilled. It wasn't until like I left, it was hard to leave him, but I left knowing that I wasn't happy. And then I knew that there was that period in between where it's like really hard not to go back to what you're comfortable in. But then if you go through it, there was like a good 2 years of feeling that discomfort to then feeling like this is the whole reason why I did it on the other side. I knew I went through it to know that there's evidence of why you have to go through that yuck. I call it like the yuck
Yeah.
transition period. And then I did it with my career. So then when it came time to leave my career, I knew that I was going to go through this yuck period. Now, but when you're in it again, it's like, and you have kids, right?
I do.
So, like you don't remember when you have the next one, you're like, "Oh my god, I forgot about these years," like or the non-sleeping years or whatever. And
Yeah.
it's like you go through you're in the yuck again and then you're like, "Okay, I had to keep reminding myself, okay, you went through this before and there's magic and there's a reason on the other side. You just have to stick." But it's a lot of pep talking that you have to do because when you're actually in it, it does not sometimes you have to train your mind because your mind will allow you to go into dark places of sometimes people go into dark places and don't come out, and that's where depression comes, and that's where but when you can have accountability and community and people around you who know what you're going through to be like, "Okay, like, you got this, you could do this." That's what I truly needed. I was in community, I found people to hold me accountable. My husband's an entrepreneur, and my current husband, I've been with him for 13 years now, but my husband now, he's an entrepreneur too, and he knows the ups and downs, and so it's like you need those people because if you do it alone, you will fall into this rut of like, "Oh my god, I'm stuck, I'm miserable, I can't get out of it." And so you need all the support around you. You need to work on yourself in order to get you through that period, and then you can make it out on the other side. And so I just always know, and even when I start a new program or if I start something new in my business, I go through the yuck again. But now every time you go through the yuck, it still feels yucky again, but the more you do it, the more evidence you collect to have confidence that if you just move through it, the only way to move through fear and to move through the discomfort is to just go through it. You can't make it go away. You can't avoid. You have to just go through it knowing that you'll make it on the other side.
Yeah.
And just having that belief.
I appreciate you saying that because when you're in it, one, it's really hard. And
Mhm.
then two, you see all the people that, like you, have done it and you've come out the other side. You're successful. You have a loom that helps so many women here in Denver. But they didn't see the yuck phase. So just, I don't know, reminding everybody that we all have it, no matter what, when we're changing or going through to the next thing, that it's
Mhm.
there and we just have to keep on going. And
Yeah.
I'm a community girl too, so I love that you do it in community.
Yeah, it's like it's what I'm an extrovert, but even in like a lot of introverts, you need the community. I was a mess during 2020, like because you couldn't go and talk to people and do anything, and I became like depressed, and I felt like I was going into this spiral because I had 2 small kids. I couldn't talk to anybody or see anybody on the outside, and it was really, really hard because that was during one of my yuck periods in business too. So that was a really dark time for me. And I think what happens is when there's dark and like now looking back, it's like Illume started in 2021. Uh, no, sorry. It was the beginning of 2022, but it was when we just people were starting to do in-person things again. It took that long from 2020, and to feel comfortable to be in big groups again.
Yeah.
And I remember it was like, I needed to go through that dark period to, like, come out into this, like, community that I was building that we all needed and that I needed, because we were in the dark.
As a busy mom and entrepreneur, eating healthy can sometimes be hard, but Thrive Market is one of the places I love to shop because they make it super simple, deliver right to your house. They have snacks, staples, everything that you need to be healthy at very competitive pricing. They are offering our listeners 40% off your first order. That link is in the show notes. Check it out today.
Do Do you feel like you build things that you need and then bring other people along?
Yep, exactly. I feel like there's a saying too, like, you teach or you do what you need yourself.
Yeah.
And so and that's where, like, true heart and, like, fulfillment comes through. And when I moved here, I didn't know anyone, and I didn't have anyone to go to. I didn't have my friends. I didn't even have people that we could put on my, um, emergency list on the school. I felt really alone, and so I'm like, "I need friends, but I want friends that understand, like, entrepreneurship and what I'm going through," and so that's why I created it, because out of a need where I didn't feel like I could find it, and I'm like, "Well, I guess I'm just gonna have to do that." And so a lot of women tell me that don't live here in Colorado, they see the community and they're like, "I wish I had that in my city." I'm like, "Well, if you can't find it, then you should build it." But people just, it is overwhelming. I don't even know where to start. Well, I didn't know where to start either. You just start with I started with a brunch, and one girl was like, "Well, should I start a brunch?" I'm like, "Well, do you like brunching?" And she's like, "Well, no." I'm like, "Well, then no." But, like, this is where, when you overthink things, things can, like, little things like that can really bog our mind. I'm like, "Well, I don't even know where to start." I'm like, "Well, what do you like to do?" This is how simple it is. I'm like, "What do you like to do?" She's like, "I like to hike." I'm like, "Why don't you create a hiking group?" She's like, "Yeah, yeah, I could do that." I'm like, it's very elementary, but it's like when you're so in your head about all the things that you wanna do or don't know what to do, it gets very confusing in there. We overthink everything.
Yeah.
But it's really simple, and you can get there when you can actually quiet your thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes it just takes somebody else asking those questions because you are in your head so much.
Yeah, that
But
damn head just always in the way. Yeah.
I know I've done a similar thing like with Orange Theory. I really wanted to be part of a community that was accepting of each other,
Mhm.
regardless of where you were with your health. Like it didn't matter if you were in the best shape of your life or you were 300 pounds overweight, like you were welcome and safe in our spot.
Mhm.
And we were going to help you get to the next level. So, very much like I needed that place. So, I wanted to create it for others.
Yeah, for sure. Well, which is wonderful. Yeah, we just need that.
Yeah.
Everyone needs community. Go find community.
Agree. Since you've made the change, you're doing what you love now. Have there been moments like on the high side that you couldn't even have dreamed up?
Mhm. Yeah, all the time. So even like I said, when we first started Illume, it started out as a brunch. We were called Business Bosses with Brunch, and now, like, the fact that I do retreats and we do, like, really deep healing work, and it started out first with brunch, but then we were doing, like, business growth where I would help with growing their business, any courses that they wanted on that, and then to morph into this more of, like, a wellness and deep healing, I did not know it would come to this point, but I remember a couple like, when we first started, this community, I was doing a breathwork session. Have you ever done breathwork?
I have just
Yeah.
a couple of times, but I
Oh,
love it.
it's magical. So, it's like just a way to tap another way to tap into your subconscious. So, I did a breathwork session, and this message kept coming through to me that I'm meant to be a healer. Now, again, talk about things that don't make sense logically. I'm like, "Well, that doesn't make sense to me." First of all, I don't even know what that means. Second of all, I'm like been in business for 20 years. I have no idea what that means. So I'm like, I don't even know why that's coming into my head. And then, like, things started happening in my life where I actually met my Reiki master through a lunch. We were going out for lunch with friends. Like, it wasn't even like somebody was introducing me to her or she was trying to sell me something. It was like I met her. She told me she was a Reiki master. I'm like, well, what is that? She was telling me about how it's energy work and how you tap into your intuition. And I was like, I felt immediately drawn to her. I felt like I immediately had to work with her. And so I started working with her. I ended up getting Reiki certified. And now just me leaning in again, following the breadcrumbs of like, I don't know what that means. I don't know if I'm going to set up shop as a Reiki master and start doing like one. I don't know if I'm going to do that. Like, I just know that I followed it because I felt called to it. And it's changed me so much in like the energy work has changed me even with my intuition and my skills and my gifts and what I see in others. It's just opened up a whole other door. And now I'm starting to see what healer means as we start to incorporate more of this wellness into business, because I do think it's like in business, in anything in life, like it's always 80% your mind and energy and 20% strategy, right? So now this is what I focus on because I'm just like, this has changed my life. I was doing business like the hard uphill battle way for most of my life, where it can actually feel with ease and flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you're doing all that, and a lot of that is new to me that I feel like I'm just getting into now, but
Mhm.
I'm seeing the benefit and seeing the change. Like in Italy, we just did our first sound bath, and it was
Mhm.
just so amazing. I was like, I want to keep doing this of that quiet and the sound. And you're right, the things that come to you,
Mhm.
really, really incredible.
Oh, yeah. Sound baths are so that's what I mean by wellness, like, so 2 times a month now with Illum, you Annie, I gotta see you at those. We did a sound bath, we did a breath work, we've done Reiki, we've done, like, guided meditations, we're doing, like, a journaling one, like, they're just so good, and I know that people there's still gonna be a lot of people who are like, "Well, I don't have time to, like, block out that for my day." But it's like everyone who's going, the more people are like, "Oh my god, this just came out, like this clarity came through on this, and now I'm like have this newfound motivation in my business because I took out the time to do this." It's like it's still changing the narrative because a lot of people don't know.
Right.
We're built a different way of like it's just one way. Like you go to school, you do this, you follow the rules, and yeah.
Yeah, agree. Well, you'll see me at 'em. I'm in now. So, well, I understand more and I love it. I love the community you're building. What about on the other side though? Like there's been these moments you dreamed of and you talked about going through the yuck, but has there been periods of like really hard times that you maybe didn't expect?
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I did not expect that I attached my identity so much to my previous career. And so when I didn't have that, I noticed that when I was starting even Illume and people would ask me like what I do, I would feel uncomfortable just saying like I have a community for women. And a lot of times the response I get still till this day is, "Oh, is that all you do?" And I could take that one of 2 ways. Like, before I would get defensive, like, it's not enough, because that's my narrative that I was brought up with, that it's not enough, and, but so, as I've been healing and as I've been working through this, the more successful I get in it, like, I attribute my success to being fully in my power of being totally okay with this is what I do and being proud of what I do and being as opposed to before, I would start off by always telling everyone what I used to do. It's like I could not let go of that past because that was my achievement. That was like what I attached my identity and my worthiness to, like how much money I made and all my accomplishments, all my awards, all the things. And without that, I felt like I didn't have anything. And that took a huge realization for me to work through because you can't be successful in something that's even fulfilling you if you have this like mindset around it and yourself not being good enough. And
Yes.
so I had to do a lot of work on an awareness on me attaching worth to money in my bank account, which I know a lot of people do, and to like I guess the definition of what a prestigious job even is. Like, because when I was young, I remember telling my parents that I wanted to be a model in photos. Like we used to have the VHS like camcorder when it first came out, and I loved making videos, skits. Actually, I just got all my mom just put them on tapes on USB just recently, and I'm going to play them because that is was my life. Like I used to love doing that. And the fact that I had parents, like, they were just trying to do the best they could, and they came from poverty, and they came from Asia, and they're like, "No, you need to do something where you're gonna make money, that you can always make sure that you can always find a job," and all this things about security, and so, I always thought that that's what success meant, not, like, what you actually love to do, and it wasn't until, I started following that, like, I had to release a lot of those stories because they were holding me back. And that took a long time because to rewire something that you're conditioned with, it's not a one and done thing where you can be like, "Oh, well, I just wanna change that and think something else." Like, that's, like, embedded into your subconscious, into your mind, so it takes a lot of work to, like, unlearn those things, and that's what I didn't realize, that that would take me the longest to, um, I guess, unlearn or learn anyway about myself. So it's like this deep discovery, it just keeps on going. I've learned that even though I've gone through the yuck, I came out on the other side, I go through the yuck again. I'm always discovering new things about myself that I'm like, "Oh, well, that needs to be healed or that needs to be, worked on because that's kinda holding me back in this area." And I do find that at every level you grow, there's always gonna be a newfound awareness of something that's gonna block. Because as you grow, you don't know what the next level is on top because 'cause you've never been there, and that's always gonna happen the more you grow and grow. And it's like you're gonna have to train your subconscious, your nervous system of, like, making you comfortable with that next level because any new level is gonna feel uncomfortable, and then leaving the old comfortable. So, I think it's like I always thought that I once I found my purpose and passion because I've searched for that all my life, and I do feel like I found it, but I do know now that it's not an end destination. It's like my purpose is going to morph and shift. Overall, like, there's a theme of it, which is to help other people, teach them what I've learned along the way. But that's always gonna morph into different things as I learn, as I grow, and as I evolve. And so there's no end anymore. So before I was always chasing an end,
Yeah.
and now it's just like, well, this is just now the cycle of life.
Yeah.
Which doesn't
Well,
sound like I know, you're not
no, it's good. Like the whole journey is
the
the
whole
purpose.
journey. Yeah,
Yeah. But I
yeah.
can relate a lot because I struggled with that not good enough for a long time and having to rewire and rewire. And you're like, why isn't this rewiring fast enough? But we are brought up, and I was very much the same way. The worth was tied to the bank account, how many members we had at Orange Theory. And I honestly feel like for me, it was spiritual of like God speaking to me, like, Annie, you're not you're not all of those things. You're who I'm called you to be, not
Mhm.
what you do. But that identity piece was really, really hard for me to undo and switch
Mhm.
around. I still feel like it's a work in progress.
Always. Yeah,
Mm.
because that was our debt, like, that's our well, look, I've been around for 47 years, so that's, like, a lot of undoing and unwork like, that's a lot of years to take on experiences and things in our life to just completely flip the switch on it. So, maybe it'll take another 47 years till I, like, undo all those parts.
I feel like you're on the right path in doing them now, though. But
Yeah.
with all of the things you've learned, like you've learned so much, what are some things that you do like daily that are non-negotiable? I know meditation is one, but are
Mhm.
there other daily practices or weekly practices that you really love that you feel like have helped you with success?
Yeah, so it started with meditation because I don't recommend that you just start putting all these things in your calendar. It's, like, overwhelming, right? So, like, start with little things and then build on them. So, before I was like my non-negotiables every day was that 14-minute Gabby Bernstein meditation and then a journaling session after. I would just because I had to write down what I saw and what I envisioned. So that's my non-negotiable still. And then ever since I incorporated Reiki, I do Reiki on myself before I go to bed. So it's just another way of meditating because you're so quiet with your thoughts, but it's now incorporating a lot of, like, energy work around your chakras, and energy work just meaning balancing out your energy field because we take on energy as we move out throughout the day. We take on other people's energy, whether you like it or know it or not. So sometimes, if you're feeling stressed in the day, especially as you move through meeting, through encounter or whatever, and you feel either sad or mad or irritated or whatnot, you could be picking up other energies that's not even yours. And what I like to do now is you could do this during the day is to clear your energy, especially like during transitions. So, like, for example, after this podcast, we could clear our energy before we start the next new thing so that you always know that you're going in from a grounded place that's your energy only and you're not picking up somebody else's energy. So, to do that, you just have to have an intention that that's what you're doing with your energy field. So, you just say, like, I'm going to ground. get present. I'm going to wash away anybody's energy that's not mine that I may have picked up along the way. And I'm going to call in all my energy back that I may have given away to other people. That's how you fill back your cup with energy. And so I like to do that throughout the day, but then I do it, it's like a reset every night. It's like a cleansing energy. And you can do it in the morning too. So those are my non-negotiables that are like daily. Walking, I try to walk every day, but gets busy. To take a long walk is not always, but walking is such a great way to, because when you're out in nature, you're grounding, and two, you're quiet. If you're not listening to a podcast or something in your ears, that's a great way to be mindful also. So walking, and then all the other things like breath work and Reiki from other people, because it's really important to like get work from other people, not just give it to myself. So sound baths, like you talked about, and all those things. I like to now incorporate those throughout my calendar if I can like put them in. And depending on what I need, if I'm really stressed at work, I'll incorporate weekly stuff. Versus if I'm not so stressed and everything's going great, like maybe you only need it like once a month. So it's just plugging those in your calendar when depending on how much you need, but making sure that you have non-negotiable every day.
Yeah. Such good advice. I always like to ask people their favorite book. I'm a book
Mhm.
person. So do you have a favorite book that you like?
Oh my God, I have so many. I know I saw this on the thing and I'm like, okay, so my favorite book of all times probably was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I read that actually in my 20s and I remember being so attracted and fascinated with it, but then not really applying it all the time. But that's when I first became known of this thing of being aware. And then but just because you're aware doesn't mean you're actually going to implement and do things. So that was most of my life. But now that I know, it's like all the principles that I live by of being present, um, in the present moment and all that it can do for you. So that's one of them. Can I only just say one? If I
Yeah.
can,
Say
that's
more if you want.
okay. Happy Pockets Full of Money is not even about money. It's about abundance comes in all different aspects of your life. It's an energy feeling. It's not just money. And so I really like that book too.
I haven't heard of that one, so I'll have to
Oh,
get
okay.
good. What is the best way for people to connect with you? Tell us a little bit about Illume if you're in Denver or Colorado, and tell us other ways if they're not.
Yeah. So Alum Collective is right now a local community in Denver for women entrepreneurs to come together for support, accountability, for now wellness, and for business growth. But so many women have been asking me who don't live in Denver how they can get involved. And so I've created something. It hasn't been rolled out yet, but I'll give you the link for signing up for getting in the know to when that comes out. But I'm creating an community online for people that don't live in Denver that can plug in to the whole community. Because you could do breath work, you could do sound bath, you could do Reiki online. And I've done I've had a really powerful Reiki experience and breathwork experience that was over Zoom in the comfort of your own bed where nobody's watching you, but you just hear it on Zoom. So we're going to be incorporating that. But also a lot of women have been asking me the number one question I get is how do I create a community in my city? So I'm creating something where I'm going to be helping you if you want to build community where you live. So stay tuned for that. And then to work closely, the only one-on-ones that I do is through my mastermind. So I have a 6-month mastermind called the Inner Circle Mastermind. It's a smaller group container where we work closely together on our business, but also a lot on the inner work. And so there's 2 retreats in that, but it's like that's where you really want to incorporate because it's like calls every week. There's one-on-one calls and then there's group calls with me all the time to really have the accountability to do the inner work together, and to be in the yuck and the transition to get onto the other side to help each other through that and integrate through all that stuff.
So good. I love all of the things you're doing and that I get to be a little part of them. So I'm super glad that we got to meet and
Yes,
connect.
I'm so glad that I connected with you too.
Yeah. Well, I'll make sure I put all of those links in the show notes. And I appreciate you being on. So
Thank
thank you,
you.
everybody, for tuning in to Be the Person podcast. And again, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a 5-star review. Thank you so much.